All right, I think we can get started. Happy New Year to everyone.
New Year.
And I think we should say congratulations to the newly married, to the newlywed. Congratulations, Chad.
Congratulations,
Thank
Chad.
you. Thank you.
I
Thank
hope
you.
it was a nice break from reality.
Yeah, it was a long break, solid 3 weeks. So
Wow. Good
Yeah.
for you. Yeah.
On the plane ride back from our honeymoon, my husband looked at me and said, "The honeymoon's over." And he said, "I've been waiting to say that for..." There's only one time in your life that you can, well, maybe, I hope there's only one. All right, so the honeymoon's over, and
Yes.
here we are. And Chad, we got so discombobulated with you gone that I forgot to assign minutes. So Heather has been very kind to say she will go back and look at the meeting and do minutes. I think, Heather, if you look at the notes, because we had some pretty clear items on the agenda, I don't think you have to watch the whole thing. Some of the things were, logistics, and so hopefully it won't take that long. So we don't have minutes to approve, but I realize one thing that's not on the agenda is just that, do we have our new schedule now? And has everybody seen our new schedule, our new meeting schedule?
No, I just saw that it came, so let me see.
Did it just come?
No, I don't, probably not.
Oh, okay, fine. So, I mean, to make it easy for everyone, I will just say that, mostly we're doing every other week, and starting today, and that is posted on the town website. But if we're ever not having it, that will also be posted, and we will say it well in advance. Also, if we're going to have a special meeting in between, in one of those times when we need, a little bit longer, we'll let everybody know and obviously post that. So, okay, so I do want to say thank you to the second survey group that met over the holidays and looks like got us something, and I really appreciate it. And I see that John also sent us something, and some of them overlap, so that was helpful to see those. Today we had talked about, we're really trying to get enough information. Oh, I apologize. We have a new guest. Rachel is going to be joining us. Rachel Burstein.
Hi.
Did I say that right?
Yes, nice to meet you all.
Hi.
Rachel is working with John, and so so she's going to be joining our meetings to listen in and help. Do I have that right, John? Help with some of the presentations you're doing, or?
No, she's in charge from this point forward.
Oh.
I'm going to be giving like the
yeah,
presentation on the front end and stuff.
Fine. So are you presenting this today then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. Well, nice to have you here, Rachel. Thank you for joining us. And so what we had talked about is we need some information from this group, and we also need then to, because we're going to be putting it into our plan, and that plan should be done obviously by June of 2022, but it also has to be done slightly earlier so that we can get it out to people. So in an effort to work on pretty much the first part of the plan, Rachel's going to present today on basic population, and also just our housing profile in Madison. So did everyone receive the handout from John? And okay, so hopefully you had a chance to look it over. And thank you, Rachel, for joining us and presenting.
Sure. Is it easiest if I share my screen? We have like a little like PowerPoint to go along with it.
Great.
Just to keep things.
That would be good, I think.
I think that makes sense, especially because if anyone else wants to watch this meeting, they don't have this handout yet. So yeah.
Sure. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just kind of gonna go over the handout, but in like a PowerPoint format, just so things are like a little bit more clear. So I'm gonna go through the population demographics, the housing situation in town, focus on affordable housing in particular, and then we'll talk about like next steps. So right now the current population in Madison is just over 18,000. there are projections that the population is supposed to decrease by 7% in the next 2 decades. And also reflecting this is a declining average household size, just a slight decline since 2000, from 2.72 to 2.6.
Rachel, can I interrupt and just ask one quick question? Because when I read that, I thought, I obviously we all know that because we closed a school and, on those, but life has totally changed. Is this any kind of new analysis, or is this still what's projected? And when I say life has totally changed, we all know with COVID, people have moved into this area and things have completely changed. And so I'm just, any study that we would do, does that take into account anything that's happened the past 2 years?
I don't believe so. I think it's all based on 2018 census data.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, these are projections that are a couple years old from the Connecticut State Data Center. But it's all we've got at this point.
No, I know, but we also have our head. So I just like a little footnote to all of us that I don't think our population is shrinking by 7% necessarily. It's something for us to consider. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's just like a projection. So nothing's set in stone. It's just what like the census data tells us. But obviously like COVID stuff is always something to keep in mind with this.
Hey, Rachel, one other question. Can you go back to that slide real quick?
Sure.
So you have current population of 18,000, and yet in the chart, we show it already being 17,004 in 2020. Is that a little off, or is this a different subset there?
They're off because I think that the current population might be based on like 2020 estimates. Or the CT data, I'm sorry, the graph might be based on 2020 estimates instead. I'm not sure if John knows more about the actual data samples, but sometimes they can be off because they use like different sets.
I would just think we'd want to square that up at some point. That's.
I'm sorry. What was the beginning of that question, Peter?
John, the chart says, or the verbiage says 18,030 current population. If you look at the chart, projected population, it already shows us at 17.4 in 2020. So there's something that's not translating there.
Yeah. So I think, right. So the projected number, the data projection was done, I think, around 2018. So it was estimating a 2020 number that may not have played out in the 2020 census actually.
Okay. We probably just want some clarity on it is all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get like more accurate data projections probably.
And I think Peter's point maybe is just that we are saying it's something, and then we are saying it's something else in the same chart. And so things like that, we just want to make sure we don't have in our plan. Whatever we're saying is what we're saying. So it's either 1830 or it's, whatever the 20 would be. 21, or we should just fix our chart. That's all.
Yeah, it's just more important to like realize like there is like a slight decline. That's all that it's showing really.
There was at that point, there was a slight decline, but now there is not a decline, right, Sarah? Isn't that what you were saying?
I'm not at the census, but I feel, just anecdotally, and I know that that's not the way you do studies, and you don't do them anecdotally, but we all know that the housing market all of a sudden, we all know that the population has picked up during the pandemic. That's something we know. So I don't want to get too hung up on this. I guess what I'm saying is I feel that the public will get hung up on numbers that we're projecting. And the way we instill confidence is by saying things that make sense to people, and not just saying 2018 data that, the world has totally changed. That's nobody's fault, but we should just give that some thought.
Yeah, and we can like add notes too that are like, this is based on like 2015 estimates, so that's why the numbers are off, or something to that effect, because it's still like an important like graph to look at. I'm going to move on to kind of like age demographics. The median age in town is 48. Out of all the age groups, the 0 to 4 age group is expected to grow the most by 2040. And Madison overall has more households with someone 60 plus or with school-age children than Connecticut overall. So those two groups are pretty important in Madison's demographics. Looking at Madison's housing stock, 93% is single-family homes, which is very high. 73% of units are owner-occupied. There's been a decline in building permits. There were 56 issued in 1990 versus only 16 issued in 2017. Most units were built after 1970, with 41% built prior. It's good that most of Madison's units are considered newer and not in like an aging shape. The median gross rent in town is $1,478, and the median home sales price is $428,600, which, as many of you know, is high for Connecticut.
Now, I'm sorry, I would also just note again that those numbers are again through, at least the charts are through the 2018 American Community Survey. And so we were talking about, Rachel and I were talking about this. We need to circle back with Erin because we know obviously there's been some additional multifamily stuff that's been built, significantly more that's actually been approved or is on the boards. So some of these numbers are going to shift a little bit, and we'll certainly account for that as well as we're able.
I'm sorry, John, you are able to do that? You are able to give us 2022 or 2021 at least? Erin's able to do that?
Sure, Erin, we should be able to get, well, I mean, certainly the building permits and the number of, the percentage of multifamily versus single family.
I think that would be really helpful because that is what I was wondering as I was reading this data. That would be really helpful.
We won't have the owner occupancy stuff yet. That will come out in, well, probably not for a year or two as the Census Bureau is kind of rolling out their 2020 census data pretty slowly. So this will probably be completed before we have that 100% count stuff. But we can certainly get Madison's, last couple of years of construction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In terms of affordable housing and cost burden, we use a definition of cost burden where if you pay 30% or more of your annual income on housing costs, you're considered cost burden. And so 65% of renters in Madison are cost burdened, and 30% of owners are cost burdened. You can see with renters, there's about a fifth that's not computed. And we don't really know like if that could fall into any of those categories with severe, moderate, or not burdened. But there is like a substantial not computed just because A, it's like a kind of small sample, and B, just like other reasons that we can't really tell. But 2% of units in Madison are assisted through the government, tenant rental assistance, or USDA or CHFA loans, which makes it fall below the 10% threshold to be exempt from housing appeals. So just to note. And then for next steps, I'm going to turn over to John to talk about, I think, the community survey.
Sure. So, and again, so first of all, let's back up and see, that was just sort of a quick snapshot. Again, there'll be lots of, I think, explainers and caveats because the best available numbers we have in terms of some of these population trends and certainly the housing demographics are based on 2014 to 2015 5-year American Community Survey, which are admittedly not 100% population counts. They are statistical projections or statistical samples. So, there is reason to quibble, and particularly, Sarah, as you point out, that the trends of the last couple of years, add some noise to that. So I think the best we can do, other than grabbing some of the latest housing data with Erin and with the building department, is kind of caveat the hell out of it and say, this is the best available data that we've got for now. But I think the broad trends that Rachel is pointing to are still largely valid and largely important to point out, which is, Madison is a fairly expensive, largely owner occupied, largely single family, in which the renters, although similar to New Haven in general, I mean, Madison is probably indicative of New Haven County in general, that it's an expensive place to try to live and to try to get into, particularly as a renter. And Peter, that's your chat point is well taken. There is a definition of all of the things that get put into that 30% calculation. So it's not only it's rent, but it's heat and hot water and utilities and things like that. And if that number creeps over 30%, then and then people are considered cost burden. And the cost burden basically means that every dollar over that 30% that you're spending on housing costs, you're not able to spend on transportation or education or food or medication, other healthcare, entertainment, things like that. And so that's when people get into a situation where they're living a little bit too close to the edge. But yeah,
John, I don't mean to speak for Peter, but I know also one of the things we've talked about in this group a lot is that, you can be a millionaire and you could be cost burdened with your home, but you're not
right.
really cost burdened when you've got, $750,000 to play with. And I think, defining it for people so that they understand who that could actually be and what the actual numbers are. And I think it might help you guys to look at the Scrog website and just see some of the most current data on that, because I think that's something our community really would like to hear. And I'm not trying to quibble with little numbers, but I guess the way I feel about it is I'd rather not present numbers that are not showing what we are today. That's all. And I'd like us to, when we're explaining to the town of Madison how many people really are rent burdened and who that might be, we can check the box on the plan by just saying there are people who are rent burdened, but I think it would be great if we could explain who in our community might be rent burdened just by looking at salaries, and even that Alice data might be really helpful there.
Yeah, I agree. I think Alice data is probably a better illustration, and we can pull that from Scrog. Okay, well, so that's the broad brush summary that we were able to pull from, again, American Community Survey and Partnership and Strong Communities and some of the other places. Obviously, there are. Well, I'm happy to answer additional questions there, or Rachel. But wanted to, sort of get into a discussion of how you wanted to move forward, particularly with the survey. And I guess we have a couple of options.
I'm sorry, is there a question on the table for us, or?
Well, if there were any other questions people had about just some of the basic data presentation that Rachel went through, and then if you want to talk about proceeding with some sort of survey, or if you want me to go through the layout that we had used in some towns that we were modifying for proposal in Madison. And no is
sorry,
about
what's the question? The option is to go through the survey as you've done for other towns, or B, go through the survey as specific to Madison. I'm not sure what the question is.
Well, I guess we have a survey that we've used in various forms in other towns that we've modified for Madison, and I'd be happy to talk about if you would like to move forward with the discussion of our proposed survey.
Yeah.
Or if there's another, I think there was another, maybe a survey option on the table or survey discussion on the table. that someone had an alternative survey?
I think there's a
Yeah.
survey that we
Yeah.
are planning on sending out, but that's
okay.
different from what your presentation will
Mm.
will reveal.
Okay. So hopefully people have copies of this, but I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Please
to
do. Mhm.
let's see. So can folks see that? So this is basically a Word version of something that we would put up on SurveyMonkey. That it's actually a couple of sort of broad categories of questions. First of all, we would go through the state definition of affordable housing, get some basic background information. What's people's relationship in Madison, live, work, both. Some broad questions about whether they generally feel as if housing options currently fit and will fit future needs for Madison's population. If affordable housing is an important issue, generally speaking, or if it's not. Then a little bit of questions just to kind of get a sense of what people's perception of affordable housing is from a cost standpoint, both rent and purchase. I do think based on our understanding of Madison's median home prices, these numbers, which were developed, I think we last used them in Woodbury, might be a little bit low because I think Madison's housing costs are a little bit higher. But again, these are very minor tweaks that could be done. Try to, again, getting a sense of if people are concerned about this, and whether additional housing options would be a good thing or a bad thing in Madison. And I think this is particularly will be a very interesting question, particularly in the atmosphere of the last year or two, and some of the changes we've seen with the planning and zoning decisions. Then drilling down a little bit about if people do believe that housing options are needed, the types of demographics or groups of people that are most targeted. And I think that'll be an interesting question compared with the analysis that Rachel shared about the demographics that are present in Madison and growing in Madison. Obviously, senior populations are growing, but kind of unusually in Madison, they're very young population, young children are growing. And so to see if the community sort of shares that sense that young families are a key demographic group. And then beyond demographics, get into sort of types of housing. In a couple of communities where we got single family, two family, we include pictures, or we can include pictures of what these things look like. So if the people don't really get a sense of, well, what does an accessory apartment look like, or what does a condo versus a townhouse, or small scale multifamily, what do those things look like? We can have basically some Connecticut examples of that visually. Sort of soliciting people's geographic sense if we want to target specific areas of town. We could also add a choice in here, which we've done for some towns, about no, don't target specific areas, but rather sort of encourage wider housing options kind of scattered throughout town. Then trying to get a sense of why housing hasn't been built more in Madison, to then maybe help us point to policy directions that this study should focus on. And then going into a little bit of the demographics of the people responding, so that we can sort of do some crosstab analysis if we want. If older home owners who make a lot of money generally feel this way, younger renters who aren't making a lot of money feel this way. So we can do a little cross analysis. And then a couple of open-ended, any other comments, and then give people an opportunity to add their email if they want to sort of stay in the loop about public information sessions and stuff like that, so we can develop a little bit of a public mailing list. So that's a very, very quick buzz through, and certainly if we want to proceed with something like this, we can do a lot of wordsmithing. But it's sort of a broad approach to talk about the concept, about geographies, about demographics, and kind of get people's sense that way. So unless I've been on mute this whole time, I'm happy to shut up and answer questions.
I guess that question I have would be for Matt. Matt, how different is this than what you had
Very.
derived with your little group?
Pretty
I mean, I
good.
think it's more comprehensive, for sure. The wording is, I keep trying to scroll down on your survey, John, sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's an umbrella under which some of our questions come. So I think it captures a lot of what we did, actually. I don't know, Wendy or
It does, but it's worded so differently that
wording's different, yeah, for sure.
okay. And I don't know.
I mean-
This is pretty specific. I keep trying to scroll down on it too.
I can
You
stop
all,
sharing the screen. You
just-
have a copy
just-
of this, hopefully.
Yeah, we
you
have a
a
copy,
you
yeah.
could print
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
at a later.
Or if you want me to go to a specific question, I can do that too.
I guess I also, I read them both, and I think there's some overlap. I think the second survey group was really thinking about what are, the first survey we did, there were some questions where people just said, I don't know. How would I know this?
Yeah.
And what I liked about our second survey is it was really like, you would know it. And it was less about, and also a little bit of education in the second survey. I like with both of them write-ins. I really like to let people, if we're
Right,
able to do that. But I also think, John, did you get to see the Scrog survey? Because some of these questions were asked.
Yeah.
I did. And yeah, there's a lot of the baseline questions just about affordable housing, generally speaking, were asked. I didn't get a sense, however, that there was, well, I don't know, there wasn't a ton of Madison response, and I wonder if that was because it was a regional and people weren't as connected to it. So I wonder if just a more focused marketing bit of spreading the survey, it might not be a bad idea to ask some of the same questions.
What would you expect to be a good response? Because we actually thought it was
Great response.
Yeah,
How many from Madison responded?
1,000.
1,000?
Yes.
You didn't know that?
No,
Yeah.
I think maybe I saw an earlier version where
The Scrog, we were always Scrog had a really bad response. I'll just say that. We accounted for 1/4 of all of their answers.
Okay.
So in a town of 18,000, I thought 1,000 people answering was really astounding.
No, that actually is
but-
pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it's worth it for you to look at the Scrog survey, and then we could take some of that out. We still can talk about the second survey today, but we'll let you finish your presentation. Obviously, I guess my feeling is I don't want to. I think people were very generous with their time, and I think a lot of us solicited people like, please answer this. And then I don't want to ask the same question. To me, it's like when you go into the doctor's office and they say, give me your medical card and also fill out your medical card number. And you feel like, why are you wasting my time in that way? So I want to get to the heart of some of the things that are on there. Absolutely. And some of the things that are definitely on the second survey of where would you like to see it? Where would you not like to see it? Do you sort of understand who might live in it? I also noticed like the very first question says, do you live in Madison? Do you work in Madison? Or both, neither? And I thought, why would someone who doesn't live or work in Madison, how would they get this? But maybe that is worth it. And it's something we've talked about that, because obviously if you want to move into Madison and you can't, it would be good for you to answer this survey, but how do we get it out to that person? I'm not totally sure.
And I think one of the things that Andrea, Wendy, and I worked on were the open-ended questions, which are much more subjective in a sense, qualitative, which I think is going to be really helpful for us to respond and to understand where people are coming from. Particularly, I think Wendy, you made a great point on the net. Why would you be negative? Write it out, and I think that could be really helpful for us as we begin to educate folks.
Yeah, and what changes, what could be done to persuade or to change somebody's mind if they have a negative attitude? Well, then what would you like to see? You know, that's what we need to know. Those are the kinds of things that we need to know, because we could have gotten such a large response because a lot of people were frightened at the idea of, you know, supporting affordable and low. And I just read an article in the paper, one of our local papers yesterday, where they called it low income housing. And they didn't even call it affordable housing. They called it low income housing. I can't remember which article it was. You know how we get those two local newspapers now every week? Said low income. And then that presents another whole picture in people's minds. And so we need to know what people are really thinking. This is what I would like to see if we have it, and this is what I would not like to see. So it's more personal.
Forgive me for this, but I think it would be really helpful. So this Friday, we're having the meeting with Scrog, and they're going to talk about the survey results. I think it's really crucial for everyone in this group to go back to the survey, the Scrog survey, and then go back to the results, because actually, even though a lot of people answered, they mostly were for affordable housing. That came out very clearly. And so I think we have some data, and I think it's probably my fault that as we've done this, it's been a little disjointed, and we get information, but so far we aren't used to doing too much homework. But I think we should sort of, as a group, line up what is the information we have in front of us already.
Okay.
What is the information we need to know? So number one, I'm going to assign to everyone and myself to reread the Scrog survey, and 2, to reread the Scrog survey results, and 3, really plan to be at this meeting a week from today. And if you can't, see if you can watch the recorded version. That'll get us somewhere. None of us loved that survey, we know, but it got us somewhere. And that should be a jumping off platform. Similarly, I think, John and Rachel, if you know, we know we have 2018 data. If you know that there are things we should be reading, and maybe this is for you, Aaron, that would help us know what the data is now. And I understand we don't have census but there's data out there. So what should this group be looking at? I think when we talked about, I think that's what we were looking at. And I really do apologize. I didn't realize you would also be presenting us with the survey while our second survey was, but I do think it's worth it if the second survey group is willing to sort of present theirs. And then maybe we want to go back over just the next week and look at some of the things John has presented, some of the things we have presented, some of the things Scrog has already given us, and see if we can make a tighter survey. I thought the second survey looked pretty good to me. Also, John, what you just said about pictures, I mean, that really, to me, sounds great. Like something that would engage people where they could say, oh, I understand what you're talking about. Some of these questions are written in a way that I think you have to understand first. So I also think we skirt over affordable housing. We say 80% AMI, and it's like rent burden is 30% if you're 80%. I mean, I think we understand it, but I'm not sure the average person does, not because they're stupid, but just because it's a very bizarre, And so I think to the extent we can maybe use the Alice model, where we give a concrete, if a person's making this, then they can't pay more than X. And here's what our median is. And there's that one pager from Scrog. And maybe we can include that one pager from Scrog in our survey. Maybe we give educational materials in our survey. Just some thoughts for going forward.
This was the housing snapshot.
Exactly. I don't know.
I'm just going to bring this up. I think that this document here.
Yeah, and I don't know where their, data, I don't know how old this data is now that you say that, but I see you have obviously the same, the 1,400, right?
Right.
So I think it's really helpful then. Yeah, I mean, so is this the same? Did you just, or no?
I think we're probably, yeah, I mean, if you look like in the demographics, these are pulled from the, the American Community Survey also. We're essentially, the thing that we did.
2019, yep, okay.
Yeah.
And so now, but you see the Alice survival
Right.
budget?
That's a very valuable piece of.
What I'm saying is, the more we can use any of our reach out to explain to people, what low income is, what these affordable units are. I think that's really helpful. And also maybe to ask a question about the current affordable housing going on, because I have a feeling, people aren't against that and they don't really know about it. That might help people understand, like, there are some things happening and they haven't really affected people. Something to think about.
Meaning some of the current applications that have been going through planning and zoning.
I mean, some things going, like, starting now.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. So, and just to back up a little bit relative to the survey, we have no, we're not proposing to replace the work that you guys were doing that I was sort of unaware of. But it just, this is just, we're trying to help out. And if some of the phrasing we use or some of the additional questions can augment the stuff that you're already doing, awesome. But we're not looking to sort of replace your efforts.
If I could just tie in also, I'm not sure I have a copy of that most recent survey revisions that you worked on the second round. And if you could just send it out again, then that's really helpful for us to look at John's version and our version and the Scrog and kind of see where we can either eliminate things or add more subjective questions, things like that. And all of us as a whole can kind of make sure we have all the questions that we're looking to add in there.
So Aaron, we're talking about that today, but Matt sent it out, but it's very possible this group has really grown. And so it's possible that his list that he sent it to did not include everyone. And my guess is then it didn't include you if you haven't seen it. So we will make sure that, I think Heather just sent out a new contact list. So there are a few more faces on the screen now. So make sure when you're sending things out, but that might lead us in nicely to the second survey presenting, because that's what they were going to do today anyway. That was on the agenda. Unless John and Rachel, you have more?
No, I would think we're all set. Anything, Rachel? Okay.
Thank you. Matt or Wendy or Andrea, do you want to?
Matt, why don't you go ahead and present it?
Yeah, Aaron, I'll share that with you too. Let me hang on. Let me see if I can do that now.
Aaron just sent it to me.
I just forwarded it.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think you were on the initial
Yep.
email.
I'll send it along to John and Rachel as well.
And maybe Al, did you get it? You did. Okay. Al gets everything.
Okay.
Could I just ask, even for the benefit of any of the public, if we could just explain briefly the purpose for the survey and how it fits in the plan that we're supposed to be developing by June?
Yeah.
Aaron, who's your question directed to? Is it directed
Anyone.
to Matt?
Anybody.
Well, I think, Sarah, jump in if you'd like. I mean, I think a couple things. One is, as the letter indicates prior to the questions in the survey, what we want to do is do everything we can to incorporate the views of the citizens of Madison, number one. Views that are being asked of them by their fellow citizens of Madison, which we think is important. And three, to really kind of dig a little bit deeper into the kind of the qualitative, subjective stuff that might come through on open-ended questions so that we can actually respond to people's concerns if there are any. I think that is really important to number four, and finally, to present a public education campaign that really addresses these concerns. And if you look at the letter, it states very clearly that what we want to do is develop a plan that reflects the values of the citizens of Madison. So I think that makes it different, and I think it's important to do that, just kind of as a matter of principle and politically as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's helpful. So we're tasked with creating a plan on how we intend to increase the number of affordable housing developments in the municipality. The efforts of the survey, because we have been spending a lot of time on this one component of it, is to get public to garner information from the public on how we can go about increasing affordable housing.
Yeah, I think so. And
as one component, I guess, of
as one component. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
I think also if we think about the plan, and John can really answer, or Rachel can really answer this a little bit more, but when we think about the plan and the plans that we have seen, the beginning talks about your housing stock and what is the need and what is affordable housing. We can write that right now. We could probably write that before we became a committee. So
right.
The plans can be as specific or as general as you want. As you know, the statute says write a plan. So
yeah, right.
Our goal has always been not just to write a plan, but to actually put something into place that's going to make sense for Madison so that we actually build affordable housing that people feel good about. And so the more specific we can be on the second part, which is some suggestions, and John has given us some plans where they actually said, here are some areas we're thinking of, or here's how we're thinking of doing it. So I know it does feel like we've done a lot on the survey. I think it's because Scrog started on this survey, and then,
yes.
But in my opinion, the goal of this second survey is, one, to educate people as to what affordable housing is, what we mean when we say affordable housing, and what is going on in Madison right now. Two, I think we've all seen this in Madison, and I don't think Madison is different than other towns, that sometimes something goes up and people say, when did you plan this? And when were you going to ask me? And when did my voice get to be heard? And this survey, that's why I want to have some write-ins, is to allow people to say, do not do this, but I wouldn't mind seeing this. And to give us an idea of what would be successful. So I don't think the Scrog sort of got us some data, but I don't think the Scrog got us what does Madison think? Although it did seem to me that the trend was we are sort of pro doing something. And now we want to hear from people, what are you pro doing?
Right.
So it's a little bit of educating people. At the same time, it's a little bit of really hearing from them. And then finally, I love what John did at the end of the survey, where he invited people to give an email address. I mean, if we could start to create a group where we then have an educational forum and say, you express some interest in this, come to the meeting. Does that make sense, Erin?
It does. I guess I'm just, because this is one component, and just looking at it from a project management kind of timeline, we're supposed to have this done by June, right? What other, so we want it to be an actionable plan, right? Or is that too?
Yeah, no, and Erin.
So I guess I'm just wondering, I guess I'm getting a little nervous that we're already in January. The plan is due by June. And so I'm just wondering if we should kind of discuss at some point in a later meeting, maybe, what our sort of project timeline is for, or maybe it's just that I don't have a sense of it. So that could just be me.
I think it might be a little of both, quite frankly.
Okay.
At our last meeting, we did talk about what is the data that we need to finish this plan. And that's what John and Rachel and Erin, we sat down and sort of talked about. And the data was, the first thing was a housing survey. So we actually understand the housing, and that was supposed to be sort of today. I'm not sure that this totally got us where we were thinking, but the next thing was to really delve into zoning. And Erin, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're going to do that Erin Mannix, that is in 2 weeks, correct? So yes. Those components will be done and quite frankly, the statistics and things like that are available already to write the beginning. So,
Right.
I mean, and John and Rachel, if you could step in, I mean, maybe if I don't have it right, the beginning is sort of this survey of what's going on in your town and what affordable housing is. And then it's sort of these suggestions. And so knowing, and we had talked about, Erin was going to put together what other towns have done to be sort of successful with affordable housing in terms of different zoning changes. And she was going to let us know, right, Erin? And that was going to be maybe a longer meeting, and that's up for next time. But are there other pieces that we had said we were going to do that we're not doing? Or Erin, if you have a thought on that, or John, you have a thought, or Rachel, on the flow of the actual plan, and if we're not getting there. So my goal with this second survey is to really write that third part. What does Madison want to see?
Yeah. Okay. So I do think I think again, because the state hasn't dictated a process or a level of analysis. It's really up to what this committee and what the town is comfortable with. Obviously, you guys, I think, have been, to your credit, very interested in public input and talking with stakeholders and getting a sense of what's going on here. But at the end of the day, the plan is kind of the result of those conversations, and ideally should have basically, kind of an analysis of where Madison is, both, physically, demographically, and, in terms of its community attitudes and opinions. And then sort of look at what's possible in terms of policy changes, local investments, changes in regulation, encouragement of different development types. As here's a menu of 10, 15, 20 different action steps, and then a matter of sort of this committee narrowing it down based on what you know of Madison, what the community opinion is, and sort of pick, here's our top 5, here's our top 10. These are the action steps we will choose to take from those pieces of input. And I think the next couple of physical steps, as Sarah is describing them, is one, we're going to work with Erin Mannix and do sort of the analysis of where Madison's policies are right now, where its regulations and its POCD are relative to housing. And then we will present, I think, in a following meeting, maybe 4 weeks from now, that kind of menu of options that could work in Madison and has been, adopted in other towns for affordable housing, whether it's, increased density in certain areas, or mixed use, or, financial incentives or tax incentives, or whatever the options might be. And then we can kind of get into the discussion about which ones are good for Madison. And I think that the public input that you guys are all focused on right now will help inform that selection of which are the right options for Madison.
Okay, that's really helpful, just to understand the process there. So it sounds like you and Rachel and Erin have a lot of heavy lifting as far as gathering the pieces about as far as, okay, now we've got the data, what's the analysis, what's the next steps, what does this all mean, right? I mean, that's kind of what our end goal. So you're going to be bringing us that information about the possibilities and the potential policy changes, and then we're going to discuss it as a group.
Right.
And in conjunction with the public, all the information gathered from the surveys.
Exactly. And
Okay.
I would, and we'll talk about this more, but I would, the public input is obviously very, very important.
Sure. Yeah.
But I would caution against treating public input as a binding referendum.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
You guys are in a position of leadership, which means taking the best available data and making decisions with it, and not simply going with the what gets the most votes, because the problem is, Madison is a highly it's a well-to-do and a very, very ownership intensive community, and it will not be remotely surprising if we do a more focused Madison study, to hear, no, Madison's in pretty good shape. Maybe we need to make some
Right.
changes around the margin.
Right.
And that really is probably not the full answer. And so I think that requires this group to show a little bit more forward-looking leadership and sort of take that public information for what it is and use it in combination with some of the other things like demographics and housing trends and needs.
Yeah.
So
I think
anyway.
that's a really good point, because I think we've seen that the responses to surveys that have been done in town are primarily people who are very strongly for something or strongly against it. And so I think that makes a lot of sense that we have to kind of look at it through that lens.
Okay.
Matt, do you want to just see if we can, in the next few minutes, talk about the survey you guys did and see if maybe there's a way that we could look through John and Scrog and yours and get something out in a few weeks' time?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's pretty simple. Again, we want to elicit as many responses as possible, so we kept it as simple as possible. And you can see from the question, from the introductory letter, it talks about community values, and this is a Madison initiative. And John, I agree with you. I mean, at some point, right, we lead, but I think politically and just as a matter of principle, it's important to have input from as many citizens as we can, and to have the report reflect as broadly as we can. Not wedded to it, but I think it's important. Just basic. Do you think there's a need for affordable housing in Madison? It's pretty AB. I don't know if you want me to go through every question, Sarah, or not, but I mean, if folks want to go through it and read it and ask me, and Aaron and Wendy.
No, I don't think, I mean, do people have, first of all, just let's be honest, on a show of hands, who read it? And I realize you didn't all get it.
Oh, yeah.
I read it. Yeah.
Okay, so to the extent you read it, well, obviously the people, do you have thoughts? I thought it was the only thing I felt was missing was suggestions of places. And John, I do want to be clear that I agree 100% with you that it's not just, what if one person says don't put it here, or what, but I think it is also really helpful to give people a chance to say what they're thinking, because we have found that sometimes we don't do that till the very end, or people feel we don't do that till the very end, and then we miss that. And what we've always said all along is this is a goal. We're not going to get to 10%. So if we just start something that's successful, that would be helpful. And I think it is, I didn't see much that I thought this was pretty good. I circled the word suppress economic activity because I thought that was something we didn't want to, that just seemed very, but otherwise I like it. One thing, which is really probably not for the survey, but maybe just a question for this whole group and maybe Aaron and John and Rachel, is the 80% AMI. Is that something that is ever put in the plan in terms of changing that idea? And I don't know how you ask the public that, and I don't even know how I word this question, but obviously 80% of AMI sort of keeps your town where your town is. Meaning that if you're Beverly Hills, then 80% of AMI is just not affordable. And so I don't know if that's ever something that's sort of talked about in a plan, or if that's, asked in a survey, or if that's just too radical and it's like, that's the definition.
What does AMI stand for? I'm sorry.
Area median, yeah.
John, you can explain.
It's area median income. And insofar as the state's Affordable Housing Appeals Act, the 830G, is concerned, it's actually the lower of the statewide or the local median. But I think, and Heather, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think at this point, the state's is actually just slightly higher than Madison's statistical area, which is, I think, New Haven County basically, or New Haven MSA. But it's pretty close. But it's not, the answer is it's not, Madison is relatively wealthy. We don't just use Madison's income as the benchmark. It's the whole metropolitan statistical area of New Haven. So it's lower than Madison's income. But we should definitely, and I was just messaging with Rachel back and forth on this. We, at the beginning of this plan, however we present our terms, our demographics, our financial information, we need to have an explainer about what all this stuff means up front.
John, would it be possible for you guys to actually draft a beginning, since we sort of have the data for the beginning? Would it be, I think we're all feeling a little like it's January and we're really thinking about how are we going to move ahead to get this done? So there's no reason this survey should hold us up. You have the information you need for the first part. Could you write it so we could see it? With the feedback you got today about Alice is very important. Explanations are very important. Spitting out just statistics that people can find anywhere, not so important. Spitting out old statistics, not really helpful, but like really giving people a sense of what we're doing. And is that something you could write in the next 2 weeks and then this group would look it over?
I'm looking to Rachel a little bit. The answer is yes, absolutely, we can write it. In terms of 2 weeks, I think so. That'll be our target.
I think so too.
Don't you think that by just doing what you did, Sarah, just now, asking for a time in 2 weeks, we would like to see this part 1. That's the kind of thing that Aaron Duke is asking for. Like, we have from now till June. So we set by this date, we'll have this done. By this date, we'll have this done. And then, it's because they say that we, as far as having the whole entire plan for the rest of, time finished by June, we have to show that we have set goals right along in time, a timeline. And
well, in fact, we did
exactly
set that timeline.
Well, that's exactly what you just did just now.
Right, but we had set that timeline for us to get that information. That's why Aaron's going to talk to us about zoning. That's why we were going to have some proposed changes that people have, that other towns have done that we see have worked, so that we could look at that. So in 2 weeks' time, if you guys can't have that in 2 weeks' time, that's fine. But when you think you could have it, that would be very helpful. And also maybe an outline of everything we need so that we're filling in the blocks. I sort of thought we had done that at the end of last year. And so maybe we just got a little off track in the new year. The past few weeks have been a little crazy with COVID and everything going on. So, but maybe Aaron is prepared to do this, it sounds like, in 2 weeks. And Matt, I guess what I would say is, to the extent you have comments for the second survey group, I thought it was quite good. To the extent you have comments, why don't you send them why don't we say this? Matt will make sure, is there anyone who doesn't have the second survey right now? No, okay. So how about any comments you have, let's give them to the second survey group by Friday, but maybe we share them with everybody, and also take a look at John and Rachel's survey and what we would want to incorporate there, and make sure that we don't have any of the Scrog questions, or if we do, that we purposely have put it in because we want to hear it again. And so the survey should be done completely by next Friday so we could get that out. John and Rachel will get back to us to let us know when the beginning could come out. And then once we hear Aaron's zoning, Aaron or John or Rachel, who might do an outline of the plan so that we can really look and say we're on track to finish it? Or is that us? Is that me?
Well, we could propose sort of the timeline from here, the timeline and outline from this point forward. That's fine.
That's
fine. Because I thought we had done that, but
We
Yeah,
do roughly.
yeah,
we did
I
kind
think,
of
yeah.
break it
Did we
down.
write it? Did we write it down anywhere?
I think it was discussed maybe, but
Yeah.
I came into this later, so I'm not sure at what
It
point.
was just discussed at the end,
Yeah.
at the end of the
Okay,
year.
so we discussed it, but we probably wasn't written down. You know, we have to.
Well, it might be in the minutes.
Right.
It-
Well,
It would be if
I'm
someone
happy
took
to
Should be
minutes
in the
last
minutes,
time.
yeah.
We took the minutes.
we
So
can
Heather's gonna
provide
watch our
you.
meeting and see.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can provide you with a basic goal as far as the next few months go and timeline. You know, for example, next.
I think it would be helpful
next
just to keep us
meeting-
on track.
Yep,
Yeah.
our next meeting, the zoning analysis, and then the following meeting to go through other options that we have seen from various other municipalities. And then hopefully, you know, then we can look at survey results and move forward.
Erin, I
So
have a
sure,
question
get that.
for you. When we talk about kind of looking at what other towns have done and has worked, I'm just curious, because that's sort of sounds kind of subjective. Like, how do you plan on gathering that information? Like, are you going to reach out to other towns and have conversations, or like, how do we determine what's worked?
Well, I
That they've actually increased the number of their affordable housing.
Well, I think also, Aaron, you have to this is very new to all municipalities, so we're all kind of going
Yeah.
through this at the same time, and John had
Right.
kind of picked up on that. But just various options as far as incentives, like John had said, and other you know, policies as far as our regulatory changes. So, and I think looking at where, yes, some of those regulation changes may have been successful or a similar type of development in a municipality, we can look to those for examples. John, you had mentioned a couple other municipalities the last time. It was at Stonington.
Yeah, and I think, Aaron, because the what we're going to be pointing to is, I think, relatively small bore things. You know, a development here or there. You know, so like a bunch of apartments, or a successful accessory apartment. You know, development, a good reg change here or there. But I think as Aaron Mannix said, you know, this is relatively new in Connecticut. You know, this is the first time affordable housing plans are required. So every town is kind of doing it on their own. And I think we can fairly say no town in Connecticut has solved it.
Mastered it, right.
So we're just going to look at little examples of regs or developments or incentives here and there. But because again, there's no numerical target or hard and fast analysis of a successful plan versus an unsuccessful plan.
Yeah.
We just need to, you know, the overall goal is to point out how we can make things better in Madison. You know, we're not looking to nor capable of solving it in the next 5 years. So our sort of best practices or good examples are going to be relatively small bore.
Hey, Sarah, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
On the survey. So why don't, since there's John and Rachel have done this, and Wendy and Andrew and I have done this, why don't I reach out to John and Rachel, and we can work together to make one survey. I will then put it up as a Google Doc, and everybody can comment on the Google Doc in this group, and we will incorporate comments as we see fit by next Friday. And then by the next time we meet, which is 2 weeks from today, we'll have a complete survey ready to go. If that's okay.
That's excellent. I really appreciate that. Is that okay with you, Rachel and John?
Okay, great.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. Okay, and I know it's getting late. I do just want to say that when we're talking about things that work, I don't know that we have to be limited to Connecticut when we look to see, you know, what are things that have worked. Okay. You know,
can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
That informational sheet that was up just very, very quickly, is that something that could be put on as almost a cover sheet to give people some information about what the different different important parts of this survey can mean?
So incorporate the Scrog municipal snapshot
Yeah.
into the survey itself.
Well, it's almost like an informational sheet.
I think
Maybe-
we could
well,
also,
We could put a link to that, say, you know, for some background
yeah,
on affordable
Or-
housing. You could, yeah.
we could put it on your page also, you know, with other information on the town's website. Incorporate some of that, just so that if we're referencing people, maybe we can keep some documents right there on the website as easy access to the public if they want to look.
I think that's a great idea, Andrea. And I know Chad and Aaron, we had talked about a Facebook page. Maybe you guys could work
Yeah.
this week to see if that's possible. And that's something we could, you know, we could put all of that stuff up. But I think linking the survey, especially if it's online, to certain things, and even if we have a paper copy, but we put in a link, maybe somebody would go to it. I think that makes good sense. Heather, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so the IT folks at town had suggested putting the word out directly through the town Facebook and not
Yeah.
creating another Facebook.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that
just-
makes sense.
Just because
Fine.
they have more followers and
That's, I was gonna reach out separately, but I was thinking about the Facebook. The problem with that is then we have to get all the followers in order to make it effective. So if maybe the better way would be to put it on the town one and then also to some of the Madison pages that already exist. And I know we've kind of debated that, but it does seem those pages do seem to have a following. So, you know, why not just kind of piggyback off of ones that are already established?
Okay, so it's late right now, and I do want to be mindful of the time, but maybe in 2 weeks, we'll put that on the agenda. Just, we will start to post in 2 weeks. And so we can think about what we want to start to post. Certainly, if we have this survey ready, that's one of the things we could post. But Andrea's idea of some information that we could post, I like that very much. I mean, maybe we even just post some Alice information too. So, let's leave that for 2 weeks. It sounds like we have a lot to do over these next 2 weeks. I would urge you, just if you, we have documents that we have passed out in the past. So that includes some plans. If maybe Heather and I will talk about some of the documents we've passed out in the past and redistribute, and then ask people to once again reread, so that we are educating ourselves on what we already have and already know. And so Heather, maybe you and I can just talk about that briefly. I think I have many of those emails I could just pass out, but I think it would be helpful. We read those plans in the beginning and we read how to do a plan, but maybe now is the time to reread it so we all are on the same page. I think with that, unless anyone has other questions or thoughts or all right, then I'm going to move that we adjourn. And I really appreciate John and Rachel, you coming in for this. And I appreciate, Aaron, that in 2 weeks, you'll give us a presentation on zoning that might help move this along a little bit. And thank you to the survey group, Matt and Andrea and Wendy, and thank you for finishing it by next time. I really appreciate it.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you, Sarah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Hey, oh, Aaron Mannix,
Yes,
just a quick question. Did you guys hire for the environmental planner position yet?
no,
No.
I did not hire anyone through this round. So
No winning candidates.
no, that's correct. So
Just curious.
we're in the process of getting a new human resources director.
Right.
So I'm going to hold off at this point and see if we're either going to re-advertise or perhaps restructure that position to something a little different, more maybe just a wetland enforcement officer. I'm still
Yeah.
exploring that.
Gotcha. Okay.
All
Good
right.
luck.
Thank you.